On the line with us is Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal of Washington State, the 7th District of Washington State, the chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, the senior whip of the Democratic Caucus, serves on a number of committees, including House Budget, House Judiciary. Jayapal, Jayapal, and Rep. Jayapal on Twitter. Representative Jayapal, welcome back. Tell us about this Ultra-Millionaire Tax Act of 2021. This sounds fascinating.
Yes, well, this is the bill, and hi, Tom. It's great to be with you. This is the bill that Elizabeth Warren and I have introduced that is basically saying we need to actually start taxing wealth across the board. So we tax it in very small ways right now in terms of when somebody dies, their estate is assessed, and so we look at wealth there. But it's minimal. We do tax real estate, which ends up being disproportionately burdened for working people, because working people have, if they are lucky enough to have a house or real estate, then it is probably the majority of their wealth versus for very rich people. So this says, listen, your first $50 million is free and clear, but at $50 million plus one, you are going to be taxed 2 cents on every dollar of wealth. And if you reach $1 billion, then you're going to be taxed 3 cents on every dollar. And just that alone, from very few families, frankly, that have that kind of wealth in America, it's so concentrated up at the top, generates $3 trillion over 10 years. Wow. And you know, with $3 trillion, there is a lot of things that we could do with that $3 trillion. So that's the ultra-millionaires tax. It also goes right to the question of the racial wealth gap, because if you look at wealth in this country and the way in which wealth is accumulated at the very top and never makes it down to, to folks of color, to the poorest people, to the most vulnerable people, it is a big solution for dealing with the racial wealth gap as well. Yeah,
trickle-down was a cruel hoax. So tell me about what kind of support you're getting within the Democratic caucus. I'm guessing that no Republicans are going to be enthusiastic about this.
Well, no, they won't. But I think that this is an extremely popular idea that Senator Warren, of course, pushed on the campaign trail. The fact that it only hits the top 0.05% of households, I think, is a big selling point, in the sense that you see how much money is at the very top, how few people are affected. And if you just took some of the wealth that has been generated and concentrated at the very top and distributed it, we would be able to invest in everything from climate justice to housing to, all of our priorities, healthcare, education. So I think that there is good support. I think that this is an idea that got a lot of boost because of the leaked tax returns of Bezos and others, where it showed exactly how little they have paid in taxes and how much wealth has grown. I mean, just in one day last week, Bezos made $4.8 billion, just in one day. Whoa. So we have got to make sure that we're taxing wealth, and just taxing income sufficiently is not sufficient, because it is actually just a very small piece of overall wealth. And that is the wealth that generates more wealth then and leads to that ultra concentration.
Yeah, one of the things that, if you look at the history of the Gini coefficient, inequality in America, it was fairly reasonable. It was, in European levels throughout the 50s, 60s, 70s, and early 80s. But they changed the way that, in a whole wide variety of ways, that billionaires can essentially extract money out of their investments or out of their businesses, so that it doesn't come as, quote, income, and so it's not subject to income taxes.
Exactly.
And so this is a way of recovering it. I think probably the two most important points are that, number one, prior to the Reagan changes in our tax code, we actually were taxing wealthy people. We had a top 74% income tax rate and a top corporate tax rate that was in the neighborhood of 50%. And that served as a kind of a cap, essentially, to income that prevented massive wealth from erupting, and is now, erupting like it's incredible. And then secondly, that that middle-class people who own their own homes, which is, I think, 70% of American families, I pay a wealth tax every single year. I mean, I own a house. I pay a wealth tax on my house. My house is my single largest investment. It's the largest asset that I have. And I pay a tax on that every year. And why is it that billionaires are not paying a tax on their money bins?
That's exactly right. And so one of the pushbacks we get, and that's why I mentioned the house piece right up front, because one of the pushbacks we get from people who don't want to do this is they say, oh, it's too hard. You know, we don't know how to tax wealth. And I'm like, not true. Number one, to your first point, we used to. Number two, we are doing it right now. We do it with housing, and we do it when people die. So at that point, when somebody dies, the IRS does do an assessment of wealth. And so all this is saying is, instead of just doing it when people die, we would do it from the get-go for everybody, and then it would be updated every year. And by the way, you know, it's unfair that middle-class Americans, working people who save and save and save to put that down payment down on a house and to own a house, ultimately, if they're lucky enough to do that in this environment, in this economy, that gets taxed at disproportionate rates because it makes up a disproportionate share of whatever your assets are as a working person versus Jeff Bezos or, you know, whoever, Bill Gates. They have multiple properties that make up actually a very small percentage of their overall wealth. So it's a regressive tax system. If you think about how we're taxing this one piece of wealth right now, why can't we tax all wealth so that people are paying their fair share?
Yeah, or at least all over-the-top wealth, as you said,
all over the top
50
wealth.
million. Over 50 million.
That's right.
I like the metaphor of Scrooge McDuck's money bin. You know, I grew up reading Donald Duck comic books, and it's just like, you know, if I have to pay a wealth tax on my house every year, and I do, and it's thousands of dollars, and I'm paying a wealth tax every year, and I'm a middle-class guy, then why do people like Jeff Bezos not have to pay a wealth tax on their money bin? Why do I have to pay it on my house and he doesn't have to pay it on his money bin? And so it seems like we have about a minute here before we're going to hit a break. We're talking with Representative Pramila Jayapal about this Ultra-Millionaire Tax Act of 2021. It seems like the messaging battle is going to be the biggest battle. How are you planning to confront that?
Well, I think it's really that this is limited to the top 0.05% of households. So if you're in the 99.95% of Americans who don't have $50 billion or more, you're not even going to be affected in terms of the tax, but you will be affected by what we're able to generate for you to be able to have the kind of opportunity for your kids to save your planet, to get your health care, all of those investments. So when we're constantly being told there's no money, let's be clear, there is money from the 0.05% of Americans at the very top who have all this wealth but aren't paying taxes on it.
There are piles of money. They're using it to launch themselves into outer space. Congresswoman Jayapal, thanks so much for dropping by and for the great work you're doing, particularly leading the Progressive Caucus there in Congress. I so appreciate it. Thank you for dropping by.